Okay, aloha nui everyone. We'll go ahead and get started today. Mahalo for joining us. Really excited to share today's webinar. We're going to go ahead and get started with just a little bit of collective breathing and centering ourselves so we can be present for all of the Ike shared in this webinar and just have have some vibes together. So if we can just take a moment to hanumai, breathe in. Hanuaku, breathe out. Hanumai, Hanuaku. Hanumai, Hanuaku. E ho mai ka ike mai luna mai e. O nā mea huna no e o nā mele. E ho mai, e ho mai, e ho mai e. E ho mai ka ike mai luna mai e. O nā mea huna no e o nā mele. E ho mai, e ho mai, e ho mai e. E ho mai ka ike mai luna mai e. O nā mea huna no e o nā mele. E ho mai, e ho mai, e ho mai e. Yeah. Aloha nui, everyone. Mahalo for joining all of us in that collective space and collective breathing and all the things. I really do appreciate sharing this space with all of you. I'm excited for today's workshop, which is anchoring our health through cultural wisdom. Renew requires internal connection through exposure. My name is Lilinoi Kohikawa. I'm the project manager for the Ohana Center of Excellence for Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander behavioral health. Our project is funded by the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Agency, SAMHSA, and is coordinated by the Hawaii State Department of Health in partnership with the California State University, East Bay, and Papua and San Jose State University, Kalamai. There's a lot of us on this project. Our center is really this resource for empowerment, education, and support for those who are seeking behavioral health care, including topics of mental health and substance use. With whether you're a community member or someone in the field of behavioral health that serves our communities, you can find something through our website and our resources that will speak to the populations that you serve or the communities that you come from. Our resources are really rooted in culture, language, and Indigenous knowledge because we understand that our Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander communities are incredibly different and diverse. So our resources really aim to reflect that. We really try to focus on each culture to uplift the unique strengths of each of our beautiful cultures. We provide culturally tailored training and technical assistance through our website. You can check that out. We have growing resource libraries that are available, so you can explore those by location, topic, language, community. We even have downloadable tools on that site. We're also able to provide translations for many of the health education materials that we have if that is requested. We also have a network of regional and national steering committees, and these are made up of amazing folks that represent our AA, NH, and PI communities who help to guide our work every step of the way. We also continue to grow this network, so if anyone is interested in joining our steering committees or becoming a member of our technical assistance community, please visit our website and check out our contact page. It has all those kinds of forms. Please join our listserv as well and follow us on social media. You can find all the links to what I just mentioned on our website. And then I think actually Craig is going to be putting those in the chat for you as well for your convenience. I'm going to go over a few housekeeping items before we get started today. So today's session will be recorded. So if you want to share this workshop afterwards, the replay will be up on our website under replays. Please note that we're using the Zoom webinar feature, and this limits your ability to unmute yourself and to turn on your camera. If you have a question or comment and you would like to do so, we are able to unmute folks if you would like to share your question verbally. We will also save time. If you have questions throughout today's session, we're able to kind of share those questions with Kanoi. If you want to share those in the Q&A feature, which you can find at the bottom of your screen, I think it's on the left-hand side. We'll be happy to elevate those questions throughout the session. Please remember to be kind, courteous, and respectful to everyone in today's session. We really aim to create these safe and supportive spaces for all of us to learn and share ideas. And so microaggressions will not be tolerated, and anyone displaying such may be asked to leave the session. So after the workshop is finished, you'll receive a follow-up email with a link to a survey. You'll also get it in the chat here today, and it will kind of auto-populate when you sign out, like most surveys do when you sign out of Zoom. So please take a few minutes afterwards to complete it. It really does help inform the opportunities that we're able to provide through the center. Papolalokahi, as our project partner, has been designated as an approved provider of social work continuing education contact hours by the National Association of Social Workers, Hawaii chapter. Papolalokahi maintains responsibility for this program. This training has also been approved by the Hawaii Department of Health, Alcohol, and Drug Abuse Division for CSAC, CCS, CPS, CCJP, CSAPA credit. While both credentialing bodies are nationally recognized, we do recommend that folks check with their local credentialing body to make sure that they will accept these credits. For those wishing to claim these continuing education credit, the link for the attendance verification will be dropped into the chat at the end of today's session and sent through our follow-up email tomorrow, just in case you missed it. And just as a note, upon completion of that form, you'll receive an email, which is your attendance credit letter. Note that this email does come from a no-reply@qualtrics-survey.com address, which is often filtered to your junk or spam. So please check your spam folder or shoot me out an email. But I will also say it's almost always in your spam folder. It does the same thing to me. So if you have any questions or feedback on this, please let me know. We're going to put my email into the chat as well. Okay, now all of that is out of the way. We're going to go ahead and introduce our amazing presenter for today, and I'm really excited to get into all the amazing things that she's going to share with us today. Kanoi Lani Davis from Molokai Inui Hina. She is a Native Hawaiian single mother that raised 4 daughters on her own as a practice of being the nurturer and protector through innate kuleana. She has been in the realm of health and well-being for 14 plus years. Davis started in the pilot program in 2013 as an integrated cultural navigator for Molokai Community Health Center, working with the medical, behavioral health, and dental departments. Since then, she sat on the board of MCHC, serving 3 years, and has committed to a culturally involved system. Davis contributed her work with building out curriculum for substance abuse youth prevention programs and served Molokai youth. Davis has evolved her work through hands-on experience and created train-the-trainers with educators at Leeward Community College, several nonprofit organizations that serve community in prevention, intervention, and recovery. Her work extended into community that now involves crisis counseling, Native Hawaiian practitioners, and Lahaina survivors. She deeply believes that 40 plus years she has trained in martial arts, healing, hula, and lua has come to this. The art of life and death through defense and dance has provided the foundational means to who she is and what she is meant to do in this lifetime. Beli no mai, Kanoi, mahalo for being here and just agreeing to this.
Mahalo Lilinoi, and mahalo Ohana Center of Excellence, and the families and coordinators that allowed us to be in this space. I'm really happy to be here, and just grateful for being able to share some of the work that we've been doing over the years, and being able to share it in a way that I hope will make some kind of difference, bring some awareness, and also to look at how do we collaborate with one another in the bigger scheme of life and in this work. Before I begin, I do want to open up with a quick introduction of who I am, a reintroduction of who I am, and I'll go ahead and start and share my screen. Please give me some grace. I'm always nervous, no matter how many times I've done this. I always get nervous doing these, and so I'll do my best to speak slowly, clearly, and if there are any questions, please put them in the chat, and we can answer them as we go through this session. So really quickly, I just wanted to share a little bit about my family. E o mai na kinile u mai ne ke au I malama. E o mai na kinile u puna I ka vai I ni. E o mai kinile I ke ko I ula I hana iai. E o mai na kinile I mai na honi o kala. E o la mauna kinile hua I ka uala ka. E o la mauna kinile hua I ka noe alo no. Ola. Aloha mai kako au o Kanoi Lani Davis, mai Molokai nui a hina mai au, no Kamako ku mauna, no Kamiloloa ku aina, no Kalohi ku kai, ola loa. Really quickly, aloha, everybody. I just wanted to bring in my children. We always bring in our kupuna, and we always bring those folks into these spaces. That introduction of who I am is this very present understanding of my koleana up until this point, or my responsibility in this world as a mother. And I wanted to call out each of their names because they each come with their own set of kupuna, their own elders and ancestors that add to this great big pot of who I am, who they are, and what we bring to the table. And so that was an ode to them. And I am grateful to be a mother. I am grateful to be a caretaker. I am grateful to be a granddaughter. I am just grateful for a lot of this work I get to do. I'm going to be looking, it's going to be weird because I'm going to be looking up here in this corner, and it doesn't look like I'm looking at you because the camera is really right in front of me. But in order for me to see, because Dolby Folds, I am getting old and my eyes are getting bad, and I have a big screen on this side. It'll help me look at my presentation so that I'm able to read it, or at least keep up to it. So I'm going to do that little transition. I just wanted to be very clear. I'm not trying to ignore you, but that's the only way I can. Okay, so what I want to do is share my screen and my presentation. Let me go ahead and do that now. Okay, I hope everybody can see that. Well, there it goes. It didn't even go to that big screen. So we're just gonna do our best to look at the screen in front of me. All right, so if you folks came on to this actual webinar and wanted to be here, it's more than likely that you're interested in how culture can be the anchoring to health and to our well-being. And so, anchoring our health through cultural wisdom is a part of us that we know, but we don't know how to do. We understand its power, but we don't know how to place it in the present. And so I get to help in kind of bridging that gap so that we can better understand that, how that works and what it looks like. Just a little bit of background. When the fires occurred last year, we all got together, a lot of practitioners, Native Hawaiian practitioners, a lot of kupuna or elders, a lot of family members, a lot of folks that wanted to help and be a part of something to help others, right? This good intention of wanting to help others. And one one of the elders that entered into this space reminded us that culture is the medicine. Culture is medicine. And it was one of the kupuna. Her name is Kupuna Malina Kaulukukui, who is renowned in our community. And she reminded us what that was. And maybe perhaps she was reminding us of what that was, but perhaps at a greater understanding, she was letting the folks who are not from here understand that that will and needs to be required if we want to get to a better place for the people of this land and for the people that we're affecting. And this will span across not just specific crisis or tragedy that happens at once, but it could be something that is sustainable. It could be something that's manageable, and it could be something that could be used for everyday use. So I wanted to just start off with that because a lot of what I'm going to share right now will be through one experience. I will not talk from anywhere else other than my own personal experience. And two, from being able to talk about something that we all can relate to, have all witnessed or have all understood or heard about in the past year. So before I begin, I do want to acknowledge my aloha for all those. If you're in here and you're listening, and you're from Lahaina, or you've lost your home, you've lost a family member, you lost a pet, you lost your just anything during that time, or if you're a family member indirectly who took care of families in Lahaina, or the folks that are in here working with folks that are from Lahaina, I want to share with you my aloha, and that anything that I share in here is could perhaps bring up something inside of us. And if that's the case, we want to make sure that you're taken care of. So feel free if you have to leave the space that is open, or if you have to reach out to anybody in the chat or in those spaces, we'll have our monitors go ahead and just pick up on that so that we can malama or care for you after. And but with all of this comes with how we can be better, in these spaces for those who are affected in things that can happen like that and in a crisis. And so I want to preface that before we begin. I can't see the chat, so I don't know. Hopefully there's not too much chat questions yet. We just started. All righty, let's go ahead and begin. I want to share about who we are. I'm coming with multiple hats. So if you know who I am, you know I wear multiple hats. The one foundation in which I stand upon is this beautiful thing I call culture. It's this beautiful thing that I grew up in and I didn't have a choice to be in and be a part of. And that's something that I can actually sit back and say how grateful I am to have gone through those hard times of wanting to quit, questioning my whole entire being in connection to culture. And now I'm here and going, okay, now I get it. And that takes a lot of patience and a lot of time. We're not going to get it in the first year. We're not going to get it in the first 10 years. You're not going to even get it within the first 3 decades of your life. Literally, this is a life work. And the more we dedicate and put ourselves into this space and really desire wanting it to grow and be a part of our world, the more we'll understand it. So I also come through our organization called Ho'aka Mana, which is located here on the island of Molokai here in Hawaii. We serve the island of Molokai. We serve the Pai'aina, which is all of Hawaii, and we serve those on the continent, the Native Hawaiians on the continent. So our goal is to strengthen Indigenous identity, and really ho'aka mana, ka is to strike, and mana is energy. It's this part of us, our essence, and really ho'aka mana means to strike with intention, is to do it with purpose, with meaningfulness, and to really make sure that we're being considerate in the spaces that we enter, and that we're looking to create sustainable health, which means strengthening somebody versus healing somebody. And that's probably the difference in the work that we do in comparison to probably this misconception of what healing looks like and what we seek in the world, whether it be healers or somebody to heal us. We are the exact opposite of that. We strengthen folks to do and be the greatest person that they can be for themselves and their families. So Ho'aka Mana is an indigenous-led or Native Hawaiian organization here on Molokai. We serve indigenous peoples across the Pai'aina, state of Hawaii, and on the continental US. Our mission is to inspire healthier families by connecting Ohana or family members to Native Hawaiian practices, focusing on emotional and mental well-being through establishing indigenous identity foundations through experience and education. I bolded that word through experience because to me, that's probably the most important part. Regardless of what I tell you, regardless of what I read to you, and regardless of what my experiences are, your experience is the one that's going to make the difference. And so what we do is we create experiences. And sometimes those experiences are great, fun, and feel good. And sometimes those experiences can be really tough. And so I want to preface through the experiences, that's where the work begins, through a cultural mindset. We call that makahana ka'ike in the work we will learn. And that's where we have this intelligence that grows into who we are, strengthening who we are so that we can endure, persevere, and be resilient in all spaces. Our vision, our mission is malama ke kahi, I ke kahi me ka ho'a malama. Basically, strengthening indigenous identity as a community to thrive sustainably through skill set, self-sovereignty, and healing. Sustainable. Yeah, we want to create sustainable, manageable health, something that we can do for ourselves. A lot of our work is centering health and culture. Those two things for us are our main foundations. Centering is providing that space to center self to its optimal well-being. Always starting each curriculum and project with protocol, as you folks got to experience here. And you can see that through line through our culture is not one that's just my own. It is not my rules or my reason or my power to bring this space to what it needs to be. It's something that's across the board. And that's the beautiful thing about protocol, because anybody can do it, everybody can do it. We just have to establish what that looks like. And then, of course, that foundation, building that foundation. Because when you have a foundation to stand upon, it's no longer centering self. It's no longer self-centered. It's centering self. And this is this part of, through this healing process, because we're pulling ourselves into who we are and where we need to be, what we tend to do is we tend to be self-centered, a lot of the times. And suddenly we're very hard and rigid in the way we want to create our boundaries and create our standards. Eventually, as you start to master yourself a little bit more, we start to understand this essence of centering self. And when we center ourselves, then we can be more fluid with our spaces around us. We don't have to be so rigid, and we understand that boundaries can be movable. Health is another part of that equation. Maoli ola, or optimal health, is a conscious aspect of our work with individuals and communities. We aspire to create the safe spaces needed to secure vulnerability and openness through indirect approaches and culture as a health model. As I had shared before, indirect is our means, and that's through that experience. And that's what probably sets us apart from clinical aspects, from the Western perspective of if we're dealing with substance abuse or substance use, we're going to go and talk only about that, right? We're not going to talk about perhaps childhood trauma or maybe something that's happening in the home. We're not going to talk about all these other things. We may touch upon that, but because I wear my hat that has to do solely with that, that's all I can talk about. The beautiful thing about this indirect approach is we don't talk about any of that. We actually walk into this space, giving that person the fullness of being who they are. And we have the skill sets, and you learn the abilities to kilo, to look at all aspects of the person, be it their home, be it their work environment, be it their personal trials and tribulations. And then we bring everything together. when it comes to the cultural parts of that, through the indirect approaches, we identify counter aspects of our growth as Indigenous peoples and peoples of Hawaii, which allows us to visit the maha. The maha is that protection, that peace, versus the trauma of being whom we were meant to be and vitalizing our connection to what is innately within our spirits. I recently learned this word maha, and I wanted to amplify it here because it made sense to me. One of the biggest things that we hear often is this word trauma and triggers. And so what happens when we start saying these things over and over and over again, our focus starts to be that. And so when we bring in this word maha, of peace, of protection, of this place of kind of just back to that soul neutrality of things, we focus on that. And how do we get to that? So we pass the trauma. We go to this remembering of the maha, the time of maha, and then we go into like, what does that look like? And so I wanted to also acknowledge on your screen, it says counter. I highlighted that word in bold letters, culture, and or counter. And the reason for that was because balance is important. And sometimes it takes the counter action to be the healing method to what is happening. We tend to go with what we know versus what we've ever experienced. And sometimes that counterpart could make all the difference. And I'll kind of talk a little bit about that later, but that's that kuhina. We may hear it in Chinese yin yang. We may hear it as just balance in general. Okay, let's see here. Are there any questions before we move forward? How are we doing out there? I'm looking, I can't see.
Kanoi, we have one question.
Okay.
Oh, sorry. Yes, no. They were asking if this will be recorded. Yes, it'll be available after on the replay, the Ohana Center of Excellence website. Yes, but that's about it. No other questions.
Oh, sweet. Okay, perfect. I see the Maha'oi one. Yeah, I know. Don't worry, I was in the same boat. For the non-language Hawaiian language speakers, we have this word called Maha'oi, and they have it in the chat over there. And I'm sure the Hawaiians in the house are kind of laughing because we hear Maha, we hear Maha'oi. And I was in the same boat as you. I heard the same thing. And Maha'oi just means to be nosy in somebody else's house and be careful what you ask for. It's an amplified version of nosy. It's like being way too much into somebody else's space, but not in this case. Okay, so I want to continue moving forward. So what does that look like? What does anchoring look like? So I want to talk about this wisdom. What is wisdom? Wisdom is, in my mind, right? The world of Kanoi is this understanding that wisdom is equivalent to time, it's equivalent to experiences, and it's equivalent to really how long you've been on this earth. And wisdom is usually given to those who are elders and of an old past, because things have had to have happened in order for the wisdom to have grown. And so that wisdom is what we lean into. That wisdom is where we go back into when we talk about where we draw some of the knowledge and some of the information from. It's not new. And we're not making it up, and we can't claim it, nor can we own it. It is something that's very universal, and it's something for all of us. And you'll begin to see this within multiple cultures. So it's not necessarily always Native Hawaiian cultures, but all cultures. But in order for us to get into that wisdom, we really have to tap into who we are. And sometimes that work requires us to first do that inner work so that we better understand it. It can be difficult when you are far from your land, far from your home. I think with the Native Hawaiian culture, we have this beautiful privilege of knowing that we are still on the lands of our ancestors. We still see the stories and the things that are passed from generation to generation are still here. So we're so very, very fortunate. What does that look like for somebody who is no longer on their land? That requires a lot more work, to be honest. Is it possible? Absolutely. And anything is possible, right? We can go back as long as we want to and desire to do so. And that will be based on what that looks like. I will share that my mo'okuauhau or my genealogy journey didn't start till I had my first child. It suddenly invoked, bringing a future person into the world invoked understanding my past. And so that's at 20 years old, that's when I started my mo'okuauhau journey. That's when I started my genealogy journey. And guess what? I wasn't even on my land. At that point, I had moved to Colorado. And so I desired it so much that that's all I dedicated myself to from that point on to today. And so being able to do that was difficult, but there are ways to research your family homes, and that's a whole different class. I know Oha is going to have one soon, so that's all I have to say. I'm going to move on. Okay, we can find unbreakable foundations that surpass time and technology. What the heck does that mean? It means the mindset can still be the same as is the foundation. Doesn't matter if we have AI. It doesn't matter if we have cars with an engine because we're not riding horses anymore. It doesn't even matter that we have a microwave versus, stick, stones, and fire. So the foundation of that mindset never changed. Technology changed, time has surpassed. So we have different things and means to either make life easier, accessible, or basically that's it, right? Accessible and easier. So when we go back to this old way of thinking, we recognize a lot hasn't changed, and it becomes the anchor, it becomes the foundation of what we need to move forward. Now, whether that be something within our culture or our families, that's totally up to you. How you use it is up to you too. This starts with connection with the use of Native Hawaiian practices and protocols. We can establish what that means universally. Through connection, it requires us to expose who we are in a safe and secure environment, much like a pu'uhonua or a place of refuge. I highlighted the word expose. Expose, expose, expose. That has been kind of this theme that has come up over the past year. And it is the most scariest, most vulnerable thing to think about. And, if we apply it to ourselves, then we can actually get to the root of a lot of our problems, a lot of our inner problems, our self problems, if we're doing that reflection, because that requires us to admit. And this is that part of that radical honesty in which we have to expose some of these faults and some of these things that we're going through so that we can take that next step to either remedy it or address it or grow from it. And I don't want to say fix it, because some of those things needed to happen in order for us to learn. And so the exposure is a huge aspect in regards to this work. And when we talk about going into the cultural aspects of it. So, a lot of the time, anything that's historical is because it's happening over and over and over and over and over again. It feels very present, but it's because we may be exposing certain things, but we're not all working together to make things different, to grow from that. So it may not be something that we could do as a community, a lahui, a group, a nation, but it's something that we can do at least individually. And that's how we show up fully as a whole, because if we show up fully doing our own personal work and everybody does the same thing, eventually you make another community. And that's kind of that cultural mindset of particles and wholes. When we go into individuals, if I do my own work and my neighbor does his work and his neighbor, we all will have a beautiful little neighborhood. But if got that one person that just doesn't want to do the work or has every excuse in the book to not do that work, you have all these nice things and then you have this one. And you cannot help that. But what you can do is really focus back on yourself. Yeah, focus on what you contribute and what you put into the environment. And if we look at it in comparison through the culture of the land and the water, how those things operate around us, what those things look like, then we can kind of gauge where we're at. Some places are there's no trees, there's only buildings, there's only, our waterways are removed, our land and our farms are removed. What does that say? And so, like, we have to start thinking about our connection to our environment on a physical level, on an environmental level, aside from that, with just the people we hang out with. Yeah. So I think we take that step forward in culture to not talk about, who we hang out with is our environment, but what our land around us looks like is also equally our environment, both figuratively and metaphorically. So in this journey, we bring back the significance of culture as a means, a method, and a medicine. So it's how you use it, when you use it, and who you use it with. And we'll talk about how that can be used in every space and how universal that can look for all cultures, whether you're Chinese American living in Louisiana. I believe I had somebody ask me that, and that was, it can work. So right now we're working with folks who are Native Hawaiian, folks who are not of Hawaiian descent. In fact, folks who are from all over the state, all over the country, in different disciplines. And we're doing our best to show that it does work, so that people start to truly believe in it and then try it for themselves. But you'll never know until you try. Okay. Okay, what's going on? Okay. No, hold on. Okay, I want to go into some of this work that we've been doing for the span of the year. So life ignited from the devastation of the Lahaina fires. I want to talk about some of these things around what we did, what went wrong, what worked, and where we are. And I think that's going to be the best balance in regards to, like, how do we move in the future? Because if we talk about how glorious and how great we are in this world and how we've helped the people and how we've done this, that's ego driven. And we remove the ego so that we understand whether or not we are the liability or we are a source of help. And so I want to talk about what we did, what went wrong, what worked, and where we are. Again, my aloha to all the families who are in here from China. Okay. So some of the things that this person's in the room, I know she is. Anyways, isn't she beautiful? Love her so much. Okay. So the good, the bad, and the reality. Let's just go right in, because this is the part where nobody wants to talk about, because I don't know why. Just because something is bad doesn't make you a failure. It just says that's where you got to go. And that's a good thing. I want to share some of these numbers that we kind of gathered. They're not 100% accurate. Things are changing. Things have changed. I'm going to talk only from the perspective of Molokai. And Molokai, what we have done. Molokai is a small island, 20 minutes by boat across the ocean from Lahaina. We're probably the quickest and the fastest area from Lahaina. And our relationship to Lahaina is very historical. And our relationship today is historical too. And so there's a lot of trust that came with this relationship that happened over generations and generations and generations. And mind you, if we don't understand that the concept of time, I think we think things happen within a year, 2 years, 10 years. You got to remember, things have been happening for hundreds of years. And so that relationship has been built throughout time. And so we were able, our small little island of 7,000, I think we had 6 ulu or 6 crisis counselors. We got to meet with many other families there, created programs, had programs across between Molokai and Lahaina. One thing I want to talk about, though, this is the reality of it and the scary part of it. If you folks didn't know, now this month is Suicide Awareness Prevention Month. And so I say that with the deepest aloha. Always hard to say, and always hard to talk about, because this is a real issue amongst families who are of color, who come from rural communities, and it's been rough. This journey has been rough. Um, as far as the work that is concerned, there have been, that I know of, 58 undocumented towards DOH, as a means that these are the things that occurred to the families that were affected by the fires. Of those 58, there is multiple ideations, and the work that I was doing ended up having conversations with folks who were in the middle of wanting to commit suicide, and some of the things that were shared, I don't think we're recognizing that, is hardship of losing something that you've worked so hard for, and then not being able to provide. We don't talk enough about our kane, our men. Majority of them were the ones that were affected by this, and then of course their families, and that scariness of knowing that, or sadly that they feel they were inadequate to provide for their family members. That heaviness to hold that kuleana, that responsibility as a male, as a father, and as a partner to their families. That's the reality. And if I shy away from this reality, then we will never get to the real deep, heavy work that needs to happen. And so there is so many folks that have had to deal with what that looks like, being displaced, not having a home, not having a job, not knowing what to do, where to go. And this is in the middle of a crisis. Okay, this is not just everyday things that happen because, you know, I'm having a hard time today because, my relationship, abuse, violence, drugs, all these things add up. And then we have crisis work. And crisis is that one thing that happens like this that affects multiple families, multiple people, of multiple degrees of and levels of being, and to be on this end of it, to hear the stories, the many stories, and to listen to the grieving and the heartache can be very overwhelming. And we weren't listening to folks, 3 or 4 folks for 30 minutes. If we sat in a clinic and we had 15, 30, or 45-minute slots, and we're speaking to people that we spoke to every month, it's a little different in my mind. And I'm not a professional. Worked in these spaces for years, but to hear multiple voices of this crisis and those levels of crisis can be overwhelming. But we stand strong, and I think that's just where we go back into like making sure that we're doing the work for ourselves and our families. Otherwise, we're incapable, and I'm going to talk about that in a little bit. But how does understanding cultural protocols give us the ability to enter and do the work? So I want to talk to those of us who wanted to quickly run into Lahaina to go and kokua the families. I want to talk about that because there's 2 sides of that. There's one side of being helpful, and there's one side of being a liability and causing more pain. And I think that's where we have to know what that protocol is. And yes, we have to move. We have to work quickly. We may not have time. Time will be against us. And we can't predict what the future looks like as far as crisis is concerned. We can only manage every day, today and tomorrow and the next day, to ensure that whatever happens in the future, if there is a crisis, we're ready for it. But who is really ready for it? Emotionally, mentally, physically, through their supplies. You know, we don't want to live in this mind binding space of thinking and feeling like we have to always be ready and always survive. And I say that firsthand because that was my life. When we talk about what cultural protocols look like, that's identifying whether or not we are going to be of service. Really taking that into consideration. Because when I went into Lahaina and I stayed there for a few nights after the fire, there were people that were coming in from the continent, and they had they were professionals, be it nurses, family practitioners, volunteers. And it was a beautiful thing to see community come together. It's a beautiful thing to see everybody in the world want to come together. And I don't want us to ever take that away, because I think that's important. But we need to really take in a lot of consideration the spaces that we're entering. You know, what is their culture? What is their needs? What are we imposing versus what are we listening to? And when we talk about cultural protocols, that's what it makes us do. It makes us ask, one, will I be of service or will I get in the way? And going back to the story of me being in Lahaina and we're setting up hubs, I was there to help get the Maui medics set up for the first time in by near Kahana or Esterns, and we're setting up at the park, and the Maui medics didn't come yet. I was getting the tents and the tables, trying to get their space set up. And then there was a nurse that came in, and she was wanting to help, and it was beautiful. I thought it was great. She's helping, I'm helping, we're doing our thing. She passed out and she faints. And I didn't know she fainted. I just saw her hit the ground, and I'm like, oh my gosh. Right now I'm calling people to go grab luckily I brought cots, so for anybody who needed it while they were there. So I had cots, opened up a cot, laid her down, gave her some water, found out she was dehydrated. And I'm thinking to myself, we have somebody who came to Hawaii who doesn't understand the climate, doesn't understand the environment, doesn't realize how hot Lahaina is, doesn't understand what necessities they need to be of optimal service for others. And so while I'm there helping this person revive her into to consciousness and to like get her into a healthier space, that's supplies, that's time that could have been given to somebody who really needed it. So that's what I'm talking about is why the cultural protocols are important, why we need to take into consideration these little things for ourselves to see if whether or not we're walking into spaces to either help folks or make things worse. At the end of the day, I'm pretty darn sure that most of us don't do this for any accolades or, you know, that golden gold award or like what, you know, we're not doing it for any of that. I'm pretty sure most of us are here out of unconditional love. But what that means is also this responsibility. Yeah. And so going into spaces like that is one, you know, identifying who you're there to help and support, not leading. That's the best gift I can give in this experience as best practices within a crisis of this caliber that we've never thought we would ever have to be in, is knowing what that means, who to talk to. And if you don't have those people, then you have to be patient. And those things will come. I think there was just too many things happening at once, which put families into positions where they didn't even want to come outside. And it worsened the mental, emotional, and physical health of those who needed it the most. And I don't want to take away from all the good parts, right? The good, the bad, and the reality, because there was a lot of good things that happened and a lot of beautiful things that happened. How can we be better? How can we do better, right? Any questions before I move on?
Yes, Kanoi, we actually have one question from the chat. What are the safeguards to ensure we're not creating more damage instead of the intended help?
I think part of that is, and we'll go over it in a little bit too, is again, cultural protocol is hard because it's not a universal thing. You don't learn that in college. You don't learn that in school. You don't learn that in everyday living. Cultural protocol is something that is something that's more innate. And what we're trying to do is bring that more to the forefront so it becomes better utilized when we come to this. So like I think what we need to talk about is before we move and make a decision to go out, are we sitting with ourselves and reflecting? Are we going through these are there certain key elements that we need to think of before we start moving, right? Before we start helping, before we start putting ourselves into these positions, whether or not is my health optimal right now? Am I mentally, emotionally ready to go into spaces like that? Because if I'm not, then I have to accept that. And that's not a bad thing. That's not a bad thing, right? That's okay. Because there's other things that you could do, right? And remember, there's not only one way of being considered helpful. You don't have to be present. There's also other ways of being helpful. And I think a lot of other folks figured that out eventually. Do we have these little bullet points of life before we walk out? Do we have our little checklist of am I physically healthy to go out there? Did I go and look at the climate? Did I look at the culture? Did I look at other people? Did I do my homework before I go into these spaces? And if we're doing that, I think that also adds to what we're able to offer. Because once we've done those checklists and really truly been honest to answer those honestly, then we can go out and help. How well equipped am I? When I first went out there, I will share with you, I was going to leave my daughter home and I was going to go. I was literally outside watching the fires from my island, knowing I needed to get there as soon as possible. And because I have the training for search and rescue, because I have the training for these types of disasters. Had I not had those trainings, I may not have been as well equipped. But aside from that, my first checklist is my daughter, my family, because I looked into her eyes, as afraid as she was, for the first time ever. And mind you, I've gone out to save other people. I've put myself in danger to save other people multiple times. This was the first time she looked at me and her eyes watered and she was ready to cry. And I had to sit there and go, what's going on? What's happening? And she was brave enough to tell me, Mom, I'm afraid and I don't want you to die. And that right there was like, I got to take care of my stuff at home before I can go take care of anybody else's stuff. Because that would burden me if I didn't. And those burdens burden others that do not deserve that or do not have the capacity to have to deal with that. And so when I stayed, that's why I didn't go until day 3, was because I stayed 2 days to sit with my daughter, to wait patiently to see whether or not this is a protocol. I can go. Now I'm an adult, she's a child, I make decisions, but at the end of the day, we're still a team. We're still a family. I come home to my daughter. And if she's not well, I take care of her. So taking care of her home is important. And so we waited 2 days. We had discussions, communicated. We came up with plan Bs, plan Cs, plan Ds. We came up with all the things to make her feel secure enough and comfortable to go, okay, Mom, go do what you got to do. I know you can handle this. I know you can come home. I know everything's going to be okay. And that, I just needed that. I just needed that. And that was enough to give me the mana, the power to go do what I needed to do. And I'm blessed to have that. So those are those checklists that we need to do. Those are the protocols. Believe it or not, that's a protocol. Checking in with your family, checking in, making sure everybody's mentally, emotionally capable of being able to do this work. Checking if we're physically capable of doing this work, financially capable. I know people who lost their jobs because all they wanted to do was help. And then now that all that's over, they don't have a job. And now they're put on the system, or like maybe things are happening. And I'm like, that's money that could have been used for people. You know what I mean? Like it becomes a snowball effect. So we really got to ensure that a lot of our foundations are so solid, and that's through that protocol before we make that next move. And that's what protocols, cultural protocols create for us. That's what they teach us. They give us the boundaries. they give us the rules, and they give us the awareness. And I'll talk about that in a little bit. I hope that answered your question. That was a lot. So I want to talk a little bit about our best practices. The Ohana Center of Excellence reached out to me to ask what this is. You know, what did you learn? And, you know, part of that is, and SAMHSA reached out to, they wanted to know as well. And part of that was, I wasn't going to just tell you all the great things that happened. I'm going to tell you all the things that need to change. And I'm going to also talk about all these things that we need to consider. For the best practices and protocols, and this is a general protocol, right? Ho'akamana's call to action was centering culture and community. We knew that we were going to go in, we knew what we did best, and we stood upon that. And we wanted to center culture and community because we understood the community, we understood the culture. In observing, and I want to practice the word observing because that's an important word that doesn't require us speaking, and that requires us doing more listening, more seeing, more feeling, more, you know, using our other senses in order to gain an intelligent next move. So in observing healing through crisis, we'll share the use of culture as health is value, you know, indirect approaches, and a team develop best practice and protocols to ensure both safety and health of our crisis counselors, whom I call Ulu, and those that they interact with. So when I talked about the best practices, it wasn't necessarily always to cover the families of line or those who are in crisis. It was to make sure that we also covered our crisis counselors, the people that we're sending out there to do the work, because those get forgotten, right? Those people go do all the work. They carry all these burdens. They have nowhere to put it. Nobody's watching over them. And so it felt as we're watching simultaneously over the work that we had to do, that I needed to also watch over them as well. So authentic interactions of trust with workshops around art, culture, and healing. That was our indirect approach. So we created all these workshops just to get people into the spaces. And what that was doing was not necessarily was healing or like creating healing spaces. Really, it was just building trust. I needed you to see me as often as possible so that we could build this trust, so that you're willing and wanting to be open, and I'll share. And culture creates those, whether it was, remember those days when you were younger and you were grounded. And that word grounded back in when we were younger felt like punishment. But really what they were telling, that's an old way of thinking, that wisdom, that when they told you you're grounded, was go get grounded. Go get grounded. That means for some of us, we had to go pull weeds. And as torturous as that was in the hot sun, pulling all these weeds on a Saturday when we couldn't watch cartoons and be with our friends, it was torture. What were the kupuna? What were the elders trying to do? They were grounding us back to the land. They were letting us self-reflect, and they were creating a space of silence so that we could be with ourselves. That is what grounding is. That is cultural. And it doesn't have to be Native Hawaiian culture. It could be many cultures. Go back to that, right? And so we don't have that now. What do we do now? We ground our kids not as punishments, but maybe we're taking away their technology. You know, whatever that is. So we needed to build that trust, and we needed to create those spaces that were indirect so that they could get to a place. Now, the hard part about these spaces are they're temporary. You know, unfortunately, they're temporary. So we got to come up with a better way of making sure that these things we have sustainability and longevity. Like, I want to work with the same people multiple times for a long time versus, you know, one here, one there, one here, one there, one here, one there, one here, one there. So I'm going to talk about that through the eyes of a Ulu, a crisis counselor, and I'm going to talk to you through creating these sessions like Ho'inana Ikeola, which is one of the workshops and programs that we have. You know, again, partnerships and collaboration, health and well-being of our Ulu. Our Ulu are, as an organization, they are required to take 2 paid hours to go jump in the ocean. And And that rule is, if you're going to be working with those in crisis, and because that will deplete you of your mental capacity, your emotional capacity, sometimes your physical capacity, because sometimes you're carrying and helping people get to point A to point B, whatever that is. In order for you to do the best work and to be the optimal you, the best gifts I can give you as an organization is I'll pay you 2 hours to go jump in the ocean. Culturally, that's our protocol. And that could be added into everybody's spaces as a protocol. As long as they're doing their work and they're not, there are some that will take advantage, will not do any work and then still go jump in the water. And I'm like, gotta help people. And that's where the protocol comes in. Because protocol creates the integrity you need and the honesty you need to do the work. Those are the boundaries. That's the Kanoi. That is the rules. Those are the laws. These are these innate cultural laws that we have to abide by. And so some folks are okay with not being honest, and some folks have that inside voice, that blessed voice to tell them, I don't feel good about this. Let me go do something right about it. Hard to find those people, but we can all be those people. And so taking care of our crisis counselors are really important. It's not easy. And because everybody's affected differently, it can be very, very difficult too. Let's see here. I want to talk about the support and the resources. So they asked us to create these, implementing a culturally responsive crisis counseling program, which is a CCP in Hawaii. Very wordy, very Western, but we're going to go through it anyway. It is. One, we're going to embrace cultural concepts and values of the community. So somebody had asked, right, what are these key components? Prioritize community engagement and data gathering. I used to not be into data gathering because it used to be the main focus versus the qualitative stuff. And that made all the difference in this work. But I did start to see why the data was important. And I think Indigenous and cultural data is very important, as it is the numbers for Western needs. Deliver culturally responsive services, foster collaborative partnerships, implement trauma-informed care, ensure accessibility and inclusivity, promote self-care and resilience, cultivate a supportive and collaborative workspace environment. All hard. I want to tell you, being an organization who had crisis counselors who also came with they weren't ready. Some of them were not ready. I'm not going to lie. Some of them were not ready. Because we hire based off of, they're hired based off of their abilities, of course, but then also this desire to help community. And I think we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about that in a second, but that was very difficult because there was a lot of unpacking that didn't happen. So there's baggages that came with baggages versus unpacking a bag and then, coming in clear. It's to be expected, right? It's to be expected. And it's not a bad thing. It does wake us up. It does wake us up to better understand what those needs are. Oh my gosh, how much time do I have? Sorry, I'm just going. Somebody there. Any questions, Shu, that came up? Oh, I would love to read all of your guys. You guys are active in this chat. I love it.
5 minutes and no questions so far.
How much minutes?
About 25.
Oh, okay. Should be quick then. Now we can get more interaction. Let's talk a little bit about enhancing efficacy. So we're looking towards our Ulu, our crisis counselors. Hakamana's call. Again, shared with you their call to action. This is within our space, providing the Ulu, a space for Ulu to release, do check-ins and ask questions. So we do get together once a week. It's a means to help manage stress. What I tried to do was to get the Ulu to come together as one cohesive unit to lean upon each other. In one of our iterations of that, it didn't work. Right? Things in our head may seem right, or things that we learned and did growing up seem correct. But what happens is when we have multiple people and multiple personalities within a space, Doesn't always work that way. And that's because we don't invest enough time with people and spaces. Majority of you folks that are in this room are probably here because you invested in yourself to get to the level and quality of who you are in your profession. Had you just done it here and there sporadically, I go do this and maybe it got hard, so I'll just quit. And then I want to go do this and that got hard and ugly. Yeah, I don't like it. It feels uncomfortable. I'm going to quit and I'm going to go keep doing this. But you're never going to have that one long foundation and discipline because you gave up too quickly. And so some of you folks in here have PhDs. Some of you folks have your masters. Some of you folks are cultural practitioners and have been this for over decades. It's because you never gave up. You have the ability to stand strong in these spaces and to move within these spaces regardless of how difficult it was. That's not going to be like that for everybody. And that's the scary part. So when you're working with folks who may not have that same mentality, who is looking at a job versus looking at perhaps their passion, looking at it as a means of an 8 to 5, but then and then the ones who just innately just can do this with their eyes closed, the difference is time and space, which also doesn't, if we go into philosophy, right, doesn't exist. But at the end of the day, this is where that wisdom comes in. Wisdom is gained through time. And wisdom is gained through experience. And that meant you had to fail multiple times before you figured it out. The hard part when we get into this work with crisis, it's so quick, it's so fast. We got to go in. We take whoever wants to come in. We were not prepared. So then I want to promote, let's not let this happen again. Let's be prepared. Let's be better prepared, right? We're not asking for another crisis, but we need to know who those people are that can act when it's time to act, when there is a crisis in multiple realms and spaces. Right? Experience in the mental health field through academia and clinical environments. That was a big thing too. When we hired, I remember them saying, oh, we want to hire people who have passion, who have love, who want to help their community. And I was like, okay. And that's what I did. And I looked for folks who were in health, who were social workers, who were healers, who have been in this spaces before. And then I watched things occur over time, fall apart over time, and I realized that's not enough. Not enough. So I really, going back into making sure that folks have some kind of experience within academia or clinical environments is very helpful. Very, very helpful because there's things you learn in there. And that's me actually acknowledging the Western point of view with Aloha, because we don't have enough spaces yet to show what those cultural point of views look like. Not yet. We will. And I will fight for that till my last breath. But we will. But until then, these are the things that we can lean on because, you understand right from wrong. You can discern whether or not this is proper protocol, whether this is going to be healthy, whether I'm making a good decision. So those kinds of things are important for us to have because the other parts of the cultural protocols and standards have not been established within the health community yet. They will be, but not yet. Until then, we have to lean on something. Cultural background and grounded in spaces where the crisis has occurred is important. Finding folks, and that was one of my biggest things I would prefer to work with somebody within the spaces to understand and listen to their voices and their needs, and move from that. Who am I? Who are you to impose yourself into spaces that you do not live in, have ever belonged in, and don't know anybody? Who are we? And really, this takes a lot of humility, lot of like acknowledging where things can go wrong. That's where the liability part comes in. And then at the end of the day, we want to talk about that sustainability piece as culture to make sure that we leave a space better than we found it, and we create leaders so that they're able to continue that work when we have to go home. Because if there's one thing I learned when I was there in Lahaina, and that was the hardest thing while I was doing physical work, was seeing families not come out, was seeing distress not being talked about, was seeing families go in and out and then like hide in their homes. And I got, okay, I gotta go home. I gotta go back. We gotta do something. What is it? And having these conversations with the families out there, and then finding out from who the leaders were, who the ones who were taking lead, what they needed, and then and acting upon it in that way, and being ready for the emotional parts of it that were gonna start coming up. Because everybody was still in shock. So those are the things that we need to start looking into is that cultural background, and then, you know, who are the identify those leaders, you know, and then again, just repeating effective data gathering is a lot. That one now, I look back and I go, we gotta do better. Gotta do better. So optimal health realities, the good, the bad, and the realities. What is our role? So this may sting. Yeah, I may be telling you things that you may not want to hear, or maybe you already knew and you realize you're not doing it, or this is you, right? So are we a liability? Really think about that. Are we really a liability? Don't want to be. I do not want to be a liability in somebody else's space, and I sure don't want anybody just coming into mine haphazardly wanting to be a hero. I always say this, and I've been saying this for a very long time. There is no hero mentality, period. We do unconditionally. And that's the difference between the cultural aspects of it. It has to be unconditional. You know, how does our ego play into this? That hero mentality, right? Are we looking for that reward? Because then we do things not for others, we do things for ourselves. That's a big difference. And you can see it. You can quickly see that. Did we do our homework? You know, do we have the authority? Do we have the authority to come into spaces like that? I think so. I don't think so. I really don't think so. You know, the government will say they have the authority. The state will say they will have authority. The county will say they have the authority. The leaders in the community will say with that. Who has the authority? Because whoever has the authority also has to have the accountability. Who's willing to work with that? And then are we avoiding our inner maha? You know, are we avoiding our inner maha in place of helping others? Big one. Think about it. Okay. How do we find a balance between connect and disconnect? Because that connection to the space requires us to disconnect sometimes from our own personal emotions. Leave our bags at home. Leave our baggage at home. Come prepared. Be there. You know, those are some of those things too. How do we disconnect so that we're not carrying that heavy weight? September of last year was a hard one. Between August 8th and, if I remember correctly, like September, like the end of September, there were probably one of the biggest, a lot of suicides at that time. A lot. Just in that span. There was suicide awareness month. Some of our Ulu, inclusive of myself, we've all had this, we've all been there. Myself included, multiple times. Have been at a point of wanting to take my own life. And if you're not prepared for moments like that, that will wake up your old triggers. That will wake up your old hurt and pain. That's when we become a liability. That's where you have to go, okay, I gotta step back. And that was a good thing. And some of our Ulu were really great about saying, okay, I gotta stop. I cannot work with anybody who is dealing with suicide or ideation and families with grief and suicide. It's triggering me. And I love that because that takes a lot of strength. And then I have to go, okay, I hear you, I see you. We're gonna protect you from that. Anything that comes in this space, it's gonna go here. Let's talk, team. Who can handle this capacity? Nobody? Okay, I can handle the capacity. Okay, Kanoi, what are you gonna do so you can really, truly handle that capacity? You gotta do your work. You gotta do your work. And you're not expected to do your work like that, but you need to do your work for this, right? So that's what crisis does. It kind of amplifies time. How do we know when to listen and when to make a move? Majority of this is just listening. A lot of it is just listening. Crisis counselors, we listen. We do not advise. We do not encourage. We do not say yes, no, and we cannot, we shouldn't. We just listen. And then we kilo. And the cultural parts of that, because still coming up, is this last part. This can be learned through 3 concepts. And this is what we teach in Ho'amana. Ho'amana is a healing method within our culture. It's called Ho'amana. It's a Ho'amana practice. And there are 3 concepts that we work with. Kilo kauna makawalu, which is observations, hidden meanings, and multiple perspectives, not through the eyes, but through different levels of perspectives. And then it can be shaped through some of the kupuna of our old past had created this thing called form and function. I added the word essence to it because we start to look at, like, we can understand the form, what's happening, we can understand how and why it's happening, what it's for, the function, but none of that can occur without the mana, the essence. None of it can. So, and everybody, we can form these things, and so we take these both Western and Hawaiian concepts. We put them to we don't integrate, but we let them work together because we're still trying to learn how to find our own personal grounding within this work. Okay, I'm gonna move because I'm gonna run out of time pretty soon. Some pictures. I just wanted to bring some pictures into here. It was really fun. It was really nice to work with the families and some of the kupuna. You know, we talked about opportunity, and what I kind of want to go into is what does this look like? How do you get involved? If you're curious on, like, how do you get involved? How can you learn? We did create these little things, and you folks can have access to this too, like our little ebook on Ho'ea. You know, just giving tools using our same methods that we teach in our classes so that people can have it in their book as reminders or have it on their Instagram or someplace on their phone as reminders. So we have these types of things. And then we have, oh, this is all just a lot of talking. Okay, sorry. I do want to go into this because we do have train the trainer kind of thing. And the way the train the trainer works is 2 steps. 1, you have to be the student. You get to let go of all of those responsibilities and you get to enter in a space to be that person. And then your next step is then to be in support of somebody who's teaching it so you can see the back end. And then you're ready to move into that space of utilizing. And so we do have something coming up very, very soon. The QR code is on the bottom. You can go straight to our website if you want to sign up in our events page. But we do the 6-week online part about cultural protocol. And so we use a basic foundation in regards to what cultural protocol looks like and how it can be utilized in your community. And the beautiful thing is, like I shared with you earlier, is it can be used in Native Hawaiian communities. It can be used in non-Native communities. And it can be used not only in Hawaii, but it can be used all over the world. And I think that's one thing that is so beautiful about understanding cultural protocol and culture as medicine and integration is you don't always have to lean on Native Hawaiian culture. We're very fortunate to be a foundation that folks can look at as an example of what that looks like. But at the end of the day, we do encourage you to start to look into your own culture and finding the ways to start looking into that. I'm currently, this discipline doesn't only have to be in health work, and health and well-being and behavioral health. It can be in medical. It can be in dental. It can be used in universities for educators and professionals. We've used this same exact method and this same foundation with professors who teach Spanish 101. Mind blown. How do you use Native Hawaiian culture as the foundation to teach a Spanish 101 class? Yeah, exactly. So that's what I'm saying. It's do not ever feel defeated that you don't know much. The only way you can understand is to go in, is to learn and to see it for yourself. The only experiences we should ever talk upon The only things that we should ever teach or even know about are our own personal experiences. Because when we start to not talk about our experiences, whether it's coming from somebody else's experience, somebody else's research, somebody else's work, how do we have the intelligence to talk about it? Let's be honest. Because we wouldn't know what works and what doesn't. We wouldn't know what fails and maybe what works here and doesn't work here, and what doesn't work, whatever doesn't work here may work over here. We won't know that until we know for ourselves through that experience that those things can happen. So culture is a huge part of where this work begins, and it starts with the programs. It starts with understanding how we enter spaces. It starts with understanding what those boundaries are, and it starts to understand what the Kanoi is, which is our rules and regulations within that space, because every space is different. The only way we can know what those things are for others is we have to know what those things are for ourselves. And that's where we start. And that's where the culture begins. And that's where the Native Hawaiian culture begins to bring up the old wisdom of our ancestors and our kupuna to life. Because that never changed. Technology changed, time happened, but that never changed. All our answers are right in front of us every single day. We just need to tap into it. The scary part is, I don't know. I don't know. That's not good enough sometimes. Go know, find out. And there are these opportunities in which you can. Okay, I feel like I spoke a lot. So I want to open up this space to if there are any questions, concerns, or just anything. Panao or thoughts.
Mahalo. Maybe Falahala, if you can take a look and see if you see any questions. And yeah, I just wanted to mahalo you in the meantime. And also give folks a moment to quickly put in their questions. I just wanted to mahalo you for, sharing so vulnerably and authentically you in this space. I really do appreciate all of the work that you do, and just the deep aloha that you bring to this work. Just mahalo for that.
Thank you, Illinois. Yeah, I'm grateful for these spaces. They're very tough spaces, and probably has really shaped why I'm so tough in general, personality wise. But hey, if you can get through this, you can get through anything. And honestly, it's worth the work. Yeah, very cool. And that's the part. It's how do we find balance in these spaces, but then also being able to be radically honest and have radical aloha. I think those are two things that we need to start bringing into these spaces, because we forget about them sometimes.
Yeah, agreed. Mahalo. And I mahalo you for the work that you've done through the ulu, your ulus. And I put in the chat the document that she was sharing, in case anyone wants to download that. I think this is such an important question, because and I want to just bring kind of awareness to why we were asking Kanoi to kind of put this together based on the work that she was doing, because I think it was so powerful what was being seen and powerful what was being done, and realizing that things weren't necessarily done. There a lot of the organizations that came in could have been a little bit more informed when they came in, and what can we do to not be in a continuous space of being reactive after the fact. What can we do to kind of get ourselves in a place where we have, at least our, some respectful ways to engage in community that we've put out ourselves, so that organizations from the outside can understand how we would want to be engaged in. What would that look like, not only for the Native Hawaiian community, but all of our communities, right? So I just want to mahalo you for for embracing our hope kind of having something like this put together that we could share out. It was really really mahalo that as well, and mahalo your whole team for being a part of that.
Thank you so much. And there is other, I want to share too. There are people who are on this call and in the chat too that like I was sharing with you folks, when we do our homework and we start to understand what that protocol looks like and means, then we can re-evaluate and reshift how we honor and how we can kupua, or how we can help and support those that are in need. And there are people in this group that are participants today that have helped in different ways. They didn't quickly just jump on a plane and get over here and just to be seen and be part of the whole thing. Instead, they tapped into the folks who were already on the ground doing the work. They tapped into the families that were already in Lahaina and figured out what they needed to do. And that's when we formed a hui for a very long time, for months. We had people across the United States, on top of the continent, who are involved with donations, funds, getting things to us. The hard part was I had to do all the physical labor of like moving boxes and like dropping them off and getting them on the plane, getting them on the boat, unpacking them and sending. And I didn't mind that. The physical part was hard, but that just meant that's how many people that were far away that were servicing. And I see Moana just add, she was a big help and a big part in leading with me this group from the continent. She donated so much money. She donated so much of her time freely, unconditionally, and she, provided books. She provided clothes. She provided food. She provided all the things, like even the laptops that we dropped off and the iPads that we dropped off to the different hubs for the kids and the families, like the money, like it was a lot at the beginning, and eventually the physical stuff lessened and were needed, and it was then the emotional stuff. And I think that's where people have a hard time gauging where they belong. And I just want to share, like, the fight is not over. There's still a lot of work to be done.
Mahalo. Mahalo to everyone involved. A lot of mana wahine, a lot of mana in general. Mana all around. I saw some questions come in. Looks like, can we get the QR code for the TOT?
You know what? Shooters. I'm gonna just put it in the chat.
Awesome.
That's on Instagram. You can just go to Ho'akamana. We're gonna have next week, Wednesday, I believe, is September 11th. We're gonna do the informational. Just come and maybe learn about what we're gonna do. A lot of what I just shared here, but like in the form of an actual class, will be talked about that day. Our goal is to have enough people equipped to be able to come into spaces. What it does is teach protocol. It teaches you what those things mean and how to form and shape them for yourselves. And then if you're working with clients, how do you form and shape that for your clients? And then also just understanding Hawaiian ways of culture, because that could be applied to that missing component you may have in your culture that you didn't know about. But it gives you a direction in regards to, like, okay, if that's in their culture, maybe it's in my culture too. Now you have a direction to look into what happens, going back to your family members and asking them, hey, were these parts important for our culture? Did these parts matter? Because that means you could be that voice or advocate for your culture in your space, in wherever you're at in this world, and be able to help those folks who don't get the attention and have the same resources as everybody else. And we have to advocate for everyone. We have to advocate for folks. Sorry. So what I have on top of there is the Hawaii Standard Time. But we do have classes that I have an alakai who lives in Maryland. He's going to be teaching class 2, and then he's on he's on the Eastern Standard Time.
Awesome. Yeah. We can share it with in the follow-up email if you want to give if there's like other links and things you'd want to share with folks, we can add to that follow-up email.
Thank you. I do. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. You just put it up there. She has the form in the webinar chat. Ui is one of our ulu who lives on Hawaii Island. We're so happy to have her. I think Anuya is in here as well, and maybe Anela. Well, we have people on Oahu, so if there's folks who need help, who just need a person to talk to, a crisis counselor, we have them on Oahu, we have them on Molokai, Hawaii Island, and now in Lahaina.
Amazing. Some fire on that team. Amazing. Mahalo to all of you. I just want to be mindful of time as well. It's 3:01. So mahalo everyone. Mahalo Kanoi. Mahalo to your entire team. Mahalo for everyone showing up as well to share space and to learn all about this. This was very, very impactful. I continue to learn from you every single time that I listen to you speak, and I will continue to listen to you speak. So I'll just keep showing up to things and asking you to speak for things. So because it's magical, and I think we all live and grow and in these spaces together, and I super appreciate it. So mahalo to you, mahalo everyone. Have a great rest of your day. And we'll add the email, add all the links that happened into the follow-up email.
Mahalo, everybody. Have a beautiful day.